Every year we welcome a load of brand new cars into the automotive world. Some are great, some, well, you know. But the opposite is also true. As new cars arrive, so some models that we've long cherished depart us for the final time, not to be renewed as the world continues to just roll on. This year was quite a big one for cars that we've not just been fond of, but have become an expected part of the motoring landscape for years. So let's give them a proper send-off. And before we jump into the video, I'd just like to say don't forget to hit that like button if you do enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel so you see everything we do at Goodwood Road and Racing. Can you believe the Audi R8 is no more? There's only been a couple of versions of Audi's V10 supercar, but it feels like such a cornerstone of the supercar landscape already. Maybe it's because they sold about 1 billion of them, but seeing hundreds of R8s applying to come to Supercar Sunday Breakfast Club, it just feels like something of a comfort blanket these days. It all began back when Audi got a bit bored of Porsche's 911 hogging all the limelight. So it built a usable supercar with spectacular results. The first R8 looked stunning. You could get a V8 or a V10 and even a manual gearbox. Inside it had all the things you'd expect of an Audi, like stout reliability or a well thought out interior. Okay, so the second generation wasn't quite as tactile as the first, but it still had a high revving V10 sat in the middle, resisting turbocharging and hybridization long after even Ferrari had given in. But now, it is time to say goodbye with the V10 supercar not seen as sustainable in Audi's future. It was meant to die in 2023, but we managed to eke out one final year. And even a special edition to say goodbye. When the convertible version of the Roma was revealed in 2023, it was curtains for Ferrari's folding hardtop. A car to tempt people who might buy a high-spec Mercedes SL over to the Italian side, the Portofino M had a folding metal roof, a turbocharged engine, and the ability to limit its torque output in lower gears for a more natural feel. It was the easy entry Ferrari. Front engine, so it wasn't spiky, but set far back enough to give a nicer weight balance. SL owners wouldn't see where the Ferrari had gone. The Portofino replaced the not at all mourned California, looking far better, but never truly managed to get into the hearts of all petrolheads. And at the end of the day, while better than an SL, it would still be beaten to next week by a 911 convertible. The Roma is even better looking and drives better than the Portofino, but if you're really desperate to get a Ferrari on the cheap, we think there might be some good deals coming in soon on a 10,000 mile Portofino or two. Oh, this one's like a stab to the heart. The Hyundai i20N was meant to be the balm that soothed the loss of the Ford Fiesta ST. Yes, the king had been killed off, but over in the east we would still source some of that majesty. And then Hyundai went and gave that one the chop too, and with it the small hot hatch market was silenced. The beauty of the i20N was that it was its own thing. It never tried to be just a Fiesta ST. It popped like a hooligan, it was tough, and it looked aggressive as hell. The brakes were great, its limited slip diff helped you just fly out of corners, and the 6-speed gearbox felt just right. And all that for just £25,000. 4 years was a life far too short for such a legend. And its reputation guarantees that, well, there just won't be many cheap ones around to find, even second hand. Oh, right, yeah, this one hurts just as much. The i30N had the finest turn-in of any hot hatch. It could be a spine-shattering monster if you hit the wrong setting, and it laughed in the face of the Golf GTI and the Renault Sport Megane, and we bloody loved it. Tasked with taking on the best in the business and founding a performance car dynasty, Hyundai did what the very best do and just nicked talent from the very best. That included BMW's Albert Biermann, who set about going over the standard i30 with a fine-tooth comb. Hyundai added chassis bracing, stiffened the suspension, added an LSD, and slapped a 2-litre turbo under the bonnet. It was glorious. Yes, the Ioniq 5N is here to help us get over the loss, but as lovely a thing as that is, it's just, well, it's not the same. Well, it is a pretty sad year for anyone who likes their saloon or estate cars with a leaping Jaguar on the nose. They're all being ditched. Jaguar was late to return to the 3 Series rival party, having been burned by the Mondeo-based X-Type, but when it did with the first XE, well, it was excellent. It drove, and you might want to sit down for this one, better than the BMW. There were some reliability problems, and the first generation interior left a lot to be desired, but the second generation fixed a lot of that, and the XE was a sharp looking thing. Where do you go now if you don't want to buy a German saloon? Well, you certainly don't go up the range, because there lies, nothing. By the end, the XF wasn't quite up to the challenge of its rivals, but the biggest Jag saloon, and estate, had sharp understated styling and drove, well, really nicely. They had an excellent ride to handle some of the worst surfaces that Britain could throw at it. It also remained a relatively simple car until the end, a real breath of fresh air compared to the labyrinth of menus we're constantly confronted by in 2024. Oh, good lord. Give me a moment. This one might make me cry. When the F-Type was launched 11 years ago, it was possibly the best looking thing we'd seen in the last decade. It's become so familiar these days that it's easy to forget just how jaw-dropping the F-Type was when it first arrived. Jaguar had been producing big, sometimes a bit bulbous and often a little undercooked sports cars for a while, and then Ian Callum just launched this sculpted beauty at us. And the drive went with it too. V6, V8, even eventually a 4-cylinder. You could get a lighter F-Type sports car or a mental screaming muscle machine if you wanted, all of which had their own character. My personal favourite was the stupid supercharged V8, which looked at a 911's scalpel sharp handling and laughed as it drifted past in a full tyre destruction mode. Some decried its daft exhaust sound, but we loved it. Even though the F-Type wasn't as jaw-dropping in any department by the end of its life, it still had by far the best-looking rear end of any car. Even its dated interior was still a nice place to be. Who knows how long it'll be before we get another Jaguar sports car? Back to buying 911s it is. Lexus and coupes. They're not always a match made in heaven. Remember the SC? Just a rebadged Toyota Sora. Or its abysmal replacement, the SC430, the kind of car that someone would still turn down even if it was being given away. Even the RC was a bit of, so-so. So, when we heard about an upcoming Lexus coupe, we weren't exactly enthralled. But then it hit the Detroit Motor Show in 2016 and turned out to be one of the best looking cars around. And when you drove it, those fantastic looks somehow hid an incredibly old school machine. A big V8 that sounded like it belonged more in a NASCAR while screaming to 7,000 RPM. A rear-wheel drive character that could at times give you a bit of a fright. And it somehow felt at times just like a big GR86. Sure, it wasn't without its drawbacks, but you could normally get past all of them just by getting out and having a little stare at it. Much like the F-Type, we'll miss this big coupe. Meanwhile, the existence of the LC always cast a bit of a shadow over the RC, even in hot F guise. But the RC still came with a big 5-litre naturally aspirated V8 that provided a proper accompaniment as it shouted down all the muffled turbocharged alternatives. Sadly, the RCF always felt a bit old, sort of long before it was taken out to the farm. It didn't quite have the swagger of the LC, and its infotainment system was from the very nadir of terrible Lexus interfaces. But it's yet another shouty coupe that's departed us in 2024, and we will definitely not toast the passing of the RCF. Both the C-Class and E-Class coupe and convertibles have gone the way of the dinosaurs this year, making way for the CLE, which replaces all 4 cars. According to Mercedes product people, customers found the C-Class coupe too small and the E-Class coupe too big, so they've replaced them both with something somewhere in the middle. While there was never an AMG-fettled E-Class coupe, there definitely was in the smaller model, and while we're a bit sad the C43 will disappear with its lovely smooth 6-cylinder engine, it's the raughty C63 that we will really mourn. Say goodbye to that mighty twin turbocharged 4-litre V8 and its leery rear drive packaging. The saloon is now a 4-cylinder hybrid. Thankfully, the CLE at least will get a 6-cylinder engine to make the CLE 53 feel a bit more like it's a proper performance coupe, but we can just keep our fingers crossed that someone at AMG is currently drawing up a plan to crowbar a V8 in. And the current signs are looking good. The CLS was the car that started the craze for 4-door cars with the styling of a coupe. They were all the rage for about a decade before they seemed to just start to slip away over the last few years. I had a real soft spot for the second generation CLS, although the latest one was probably the best looker. They even did an estate version for a bit, really pouring water on that coupe wording. Each one was given a drive that was a little bit sharper than the equivalent saloon to give buyers some reason to spend their cash. But with four-door coupes disappearing, the CLS is heading off in that direction. The niche that it pioneered is being closed, and with it must go the original big, curvy coupe. To be honest, we'll miss it. And finally, we leave with another victim of the crossover conundrum. The Mini Clubman was a modernisation of a car that had genuine Mini heritage, a little estate car with a few weird quirks. Remember that third door? But it retained some of the looks from the hatch. In fact, I would go as far as saying that the second generation Clubman was better looking than the hatch, and a downright desirable car in JCW form. But people bought Countrymans rather than Clubmans. Should that be a Countrymen and Clubmen? I don't know. And so the longest Mini will become a dodo of the automotive world. That said, it did manage the extraordinary feat of being an estate that wasn't actually practical, but it was much nicer to drive than the equivalent crossover Countryman, and could be matched with some really punchy performance. We'll miss the Clubman. Well, those are 13 cars that have departed us over the course of 2024, but let us know which one you mourn the most in the comments below. And if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you see everything from Goodwood Road and Racing.